Have you ever followed someone's advice that ended up making you feel worse?
Well, growing up as a people pleaser, I think I followed a lot of advice that actually didn't even match my personality.
Didn't match your personality? How does that work? I mean, advice is advice, isn't it?
I think a lot of advice is accidentally harmful if given to the wrong person.
This isn't a podcast with all the answers.
It's a conversation about figuring things out as you go.
From two very different generations.
With Michelle R. Williams
and Nick Hurst.
Welcome to Life Happens.
Here we go again. And this week we are going to be talking about a slightly thorny subject, giving and taking advice. But before we do, we've already spoken about how you are going to be shortly departing for Ireland. In fact, we've been talking about it ever since we started the podcast. So it's been a...
That's true, actually. Oh my God. We've been talking about it for 26 episodes and it finally happened.
It's been a recurrent theme of this podcast that one day Michelle is going to Ireland. It's almost like a running gag, except it's not a gag, it's true. And it's starting to happen. Since we're talking about advice, we could perhaps just mention that you were suddenly confronted with the possibility that you would be leaving quite shortly for Ireland because accommodation became available and so forth. And you turned to someone for advice. What should I do?
Why don't you share that? I don't want to. Can we just get straight into the topic so I can be all smart about it? And yeah, okay, fine. For me, moving to Ireland was quite a long journey and quite stressful one for that matter. And, I'm trying to do the math in my head real quick and I'm not really good at that. But I think that this episode, we are recording it on the last day of April. But I think it will be coming out the week that I'm leaving, actually, based on the math, or very, very, close to that date, which is scary. So maybe now, when you are listening to it, I'm already in Ireland. But it was quite quick at the end of the day and quite sudden. And I didn't handle it very well. And it just got so overwhelming. And so it ended up with me calling Nick and being like, Nick, I need you to fix my life. I need you to tell me what to do. I need you to, do the decision, make the decision for me because I'm just so sick of it. Do you take it as giving me an advice or just sort of navigating my life? No, I was looking for advice. But the thing is, and this is the main topic of this episode, and this is the main point I want to make, is that you gave me the advice of just do it. Even if it's so quick and so sudden, just do it. You are able to handle everything that comes with it. But you gave that advice to me. And I bet there are people who would you never give that advice to because they can't handle it.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to say because it's a unique circumstance. So yeah, but it's true. And when you say giving advice, I mean, there's two things going on here. Is it giving advice or is it listening and discussing it? Because we talked about it a lot and we sort of went through a whole number of scenarios and also just how you were feeling about different things. And in the end, I felt that you should take the plunge because the opportunity is right there, right now, somewhere to live ahead of your studies in Ireland, and that opportunity might not come around again for a while. And so I kind of, to use a relatively modern phrase, I think, I kind of use the phrase, it's the universe telling you something.
Yeah, because that's one of the things you believe in, which I still find so funny. But I do believe in that as well. I'm talking to the universe every single fucking day, so...
I'm not sure I believe in it.
You do. In destiny and all of that, you do. Don't act all tough now that we are recording, man.
No, honestly, I'm not sure that I do, but really. I might take the universe's opinion under consideration.
Right, of course. But I just want to make something clear. I am perfectly capable of making my own decisions, all right? And the way I put it, it was just to make it sound funny. But the thing is, at the end of the day, as you are saying that we sort of talked about, all the options, I already knew that. Everything you told me, I already knew. And, knowing you so well, I also knew exactly what you will tell me, and you did. The thing is sometimes that even if you know something, you just need that reassurance from other party. And I am that type of person a lot. And I just need someone else to repeat the thoughts that I already have to, I don't know, just be more secure with my decision, probably.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, speaking of advice, I am someone who is very, very independent, and I always took care of everything on my own. And if you weren't around and I didn't have the chance to speak to you about this whole Ireland thing, I would make the same decision at the end of the day. But sometimes it just feels nice to, hear someone else's opinion and being reassured in what you are doing is correct thing and you can actually do it.
In English, we call that a sounding board. You use someone as a sounding board. And now I think about it,
Pretty much so.
This is the ridiculous thing about language. What on earth is a sounding board?
I have no idea.
Really?
I was just nodding along so you don't call me stupid because I don't know something. But I was just like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Just nodding along.
But it doesn't. I mean, please, if you know, leave your answer in the comments section, because I've worked in radio and TV all my life. So sound is, and the technicalities of sound is a very important part of has been a very important part of my work. And yet I've no idea what a sounding board is. Imagine a piece of wood with an ear carved into it you can talk to. But if anybody knows, please leave an answer in the comments, because it would be fascinating to find out. While you're there, mind you, don't forget to leave us a like. Oh, I'm such a tart, aren't I? Let's move on.
And even if you don't know the right answer, just make it up and still put it there, because I love when Nick doesn't know something and we have to take advantage of that and we have to act all smart around him and acting like, oh my gosh, a sounding board, man, how come you don't know that? So even if you don't know the answer, you do, okay? Between the two of us, you do.
Okay, I feel you're ganging up on me.
No.
Have you ever given someone advice and instantly regretted it?
I hope not. I would love to say that I'm quite good at reading people and I tailor my advice for that person I'm talking to. So I hope I didn't. I can't think of anything. So I'm certainly not regretting anything I ever said or any advice I ever gave. But if the outcome was good, I don't know. Maybe there's someone whom I given an advice to and it ended up terribly for them. If that's your case, I apologize. I don't think so. I think I'm pretty good in giving advice. I'm also not one to give advice without being asked to, because there's nothing people hate more than being educated without asking for it. So, but at the same time, I'm someone who's been asked for a lot of advice. So I think it's sort of my area. What about you? Any advice you ever gave me that you now regret? Move to Ireland, for example. Start a podcast, for example.
I didn't. That's not advice. That was a suggestion. There's a difference between suggestions, or is there a difference?
Gosh, don't go English teacher on me, all right?
No. Not being English teacher, but I mean, what is the difference between a suggestion and advice? I suggest you invest all your money into, I don't know, cigarette stocks, because cigarette smoking is only ever going to grow. Is that a suggestion or is that financial advice?
I honestly don't think there's a difference between the two. I'm trying to think of Czech equivalent to that word or to these words, and there's only one that comes to mind, so I genuinely believe that it's the same thing. Don't you think?
I think there has to be a difference. But first, By the way, kids, this is not to endorse smoking and cigarettes.
Yeah, I love the fact that it was the first idea that came to your head about smoking.
Well, part of that is because it's one of the key plot themes in my new book.
I knew you were about to give that explanation. I knew it.
Coming out later this year, Second Spider from the Right. Anyway, don't start smoking because you'll, at some point in your life, you'll spend years trying to give up. It'll be hard.
Okay, and is that an advice or a suggestion?
That's advice. Now, that is not a suggestion. That's advice. So there is clearly...
Damn it.
There is a difference there. No, not damn it at all. That was actually a very good question, and you pinpoint it. I say, don't start smoking. That is advice. It's more than a suggestion.
So maybe, hear me out, the difference between advice and suggestion is the level of passive aggressiveness in it. Because I feel like suggestion is like, if I were you, I wouldn't do that, but you do you, man, none of my business. And advice, I feel like it's more in that parental way. When like your parents tell you, oh yeah, I don't think you should do that. And you just know, they are not giving you an option. You just know it's the nice way of saying, don't you fucking dare.
But you've narrowed it down to a very kind of narrow and specific situation. Parents advising their kids. But
I was just trying to paint a picture.
Yeah. But in that instance, that could be termed advice that wasn't asked for, which, I mean, is part of the duty of a parent, is to advise your kids, don't cross the road when there's a massive bus coming down at 50 kilometers an hour.
That's certainly not a suggestion. That's a nice way of saying, do not do that, or you will die, literally.
Yeah. So then, of course, there is this natural thing where we get to a point in our lives where we rebel against our parents. So we start to do the opposite to their advice. Probably not crossing the road in front of buses, but on the other hand, the smoking thing is a well-known rebellious device.
Don't worry, moving abroad is also one of them. That was a very, very often repeated suggestion of my mom when I was growing up. Don't you dare move abroad. Oops, sorry, mom.
And look what happened. So why do we love giving advice? Or do we love giving advice? Some people do, maybe some people don't.
I think, and this might be a hot take, but I feel like people who shouldn't be giving advice are those who love giving advice, and people who actually are smart enough or capable enough of giving good advice, they don't really want to do it. And I feel that also a lot comes with you. Because even when I tell you like, okay, tell me what the fuck am I supposed to do with my life? You are always like, oh, I'm not really one who should tell you that. And I'm like, yeah, of course not. I'm just being dramatic about it. But I feel like you are the type of person who actually gives good advice, but don't really do it much for one or another reason. On the other hand, now I literally started the episode with the fact that I love giving advice. And maybe I just like outed myself a bit. Maybe, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just a 21-year-old girl who has no idea what she's doing with her life. So yeah, maybe don't take advice from me. Especially like relationship advice. My relationship advice will always be break up with him, dump him. Always, every single time. So yeah, maybe don't do that.
I would just say definitely don't take Michelle's advice if you think that it actually her answer has been written before you ask the question.
Sometimes.
Michelle, what
I
should
can
I do
give
about
good
my
advice.
He's loaded and he wants to marry me. What should I do? Dump him.
Oh, well, if you don't want to marry him, then yes, dump him if he wants to marry you. Also, speaking of who wants to marry you and who's he? What do I do?
No,
I was.
You
walked into that. You walked into that.
I was positing a scenario where one of your girlfriends asks you for advice about her very rich boyfriend.
Oh, wait, that changes the scenario.
That's what I just see. Well, you weren't listening. What she said to you was, should I marry I'm going to add to this now, my very rich and good looking boyfriend who's also a movie star because he's desperate to put a ring on my finger. And you just say, dump him because you've already written the advice before.
Yeah, see, I shouldn't be the one giving advice. My advice are terrible and I shouldn't be giving them. And yeah, okay, I take it back.
I think there's a serious point here.
If he looks like Andrew Garfield, marry him.
That's a Michelle thing, by the way. There are other movie stars.
That's my celebrity husband.
Other movie stars are available on request. Oh.
Yes.
But it does make a serious point in that any advice would need to be tailored towards the person that you're advising.
Exactly.
Everybody's different. So you can't just have a blanket answer for every possible scenario. Tell me about, because I've seen this in your notes, the Dunning-Kruger effect.
That would be the one thing you remember from everything I say because it reminds you of some German movie star or whoever she is.
Diane Kruger, one of the most beautiful women in the world. Well, you were talking about Andrew Garfield, so I'm allowed to talk about...
Yeah, okay, that's right.
Diane Kruger, thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, marry her. Don't dump her.
The Dunning-Kruger effect, Michelle.
So basically, I think I already hinted at it earlier, but basically what the effect is that less self-aware people overestimate themselves and more self-aware people tend to underestimate themselves. So basically what that means is that when you give a certain advice, for example, you have people pleasers. We all know a people pleaser, we might be a people pleaser. And when someone says, be more nice to people, a people pleaser will take that advice, even though they already feel bad about not being nice enough. But people who are actually rude to others and who this advice is meant for won't take it because they are not self-aware enough to take it.
So it kind of makes the whole giving advice thing a bit pointless then. The people who need it don't listen to it, and the people who don't need it overreact to it, maybe.
So basically, that's the whole point of the episode or of this thought that I had. Because as you said, now giving advice is completely useless, but I don't think that's the case. I think what it shows is that you have to think about the person you are giving the advice to. Because you can feel like saying someone, oh, you should be more nice to people. It's such a harmless advice. We all should be a bit nicer to each other. But when you already have someone who is neglecting themselves for the sake of others and you tell them this advice, it's actually pretty harmful without you meaning to. So if you know someone's a people pleaser, do not tell them to be more nice to people. And on the other hand, I would give a person who is a people pleaser the advice of be more selfish. Take care of your needs. Think about yourself first because you never do that. But when you have someone who is already very self-centered and you tell them, oh, you should be more selfish, what good does that do? None. So you have to read the person you're speaking to. But the thing is that I feel like we tend to have certain amount of advice and giving it to every single person. Like we feel like advice is so universal. And I was telling you this when we were talking about this topic that I am someone who advises people to move abroad. It's just something that I will bring into any conversation, especially into a conversation about, I don't know, what should I do with my life? Should I take like a gap year? Should I travel? This and that. I think that I do have some experience on that matter. And for me, moving abroad is the best thing you can do for yourself. But again, that doesn't mean I will give that advice to everyone. I have friends, I have known people whom I know this advice would absolutely ruin their life. They are just not wired to move abroad and they just wouldn't handle it, which is not a bad thing. Everyone's different. But if I gave that advice to that specific person, it would be a bad advice. Because if they took it and they actually moved abroad just because, based on something I said, it would be an absolutely terrible experience for them. And therefore, they could blame me because I was the one who gave them this advice.
It makes sense. And it's a typical human, if you like, get out clause, a reaction to try and blame others for your own
It's easy.
mistakes. Yeah. And I think that's what people do. And that is a problem with giving advice, is that you could be setting yourself up for that kind of comeback, that somebody feels that they can blame you for basically what has been their decision. And ultimately, we need all of us need to take responsibility for our own life. You can't just say that because some stranger you met in a pub said you should invest in this racehorse. I advise you to give me all your money. We could put it in this racehorse and we'll make millions. And then you never see him again. Okay, that's a bit of an extreme example because that's basically a fraudulent
You blame me
act.
for giving like extreme examples, and then you are here with racehorsing. Come on.
Just the first thing that comes into my head, bizarrely. There's all sorts of different advice. I mean, there's the advice like you go shopping with your friend and they say, should I buy this shirt or this shirt? You know, that's advice. And then do you spend the rest of your life blaming your friend because ultimately
rest of your life
you don't like the shirt, or it itches when you wear it, or whatever? I don't know.
You just reminded me. Do you remember in our episode about decisions when you were making fun of me for my coin flipping method? And
Yeah.
I sort of explained that, I mean, I don't really do it, but I was trying to explain that the moment you flip the coin and let the decision to, well, a higher power or physics or universe or whatever, you sort of realize what option you actually want. I have the same thing with that example you just gave. Because when I have, let's say, like 2 t-shirts, and I'm usually shopping with my mom, and I'm like, Mom, I really don't know which one I want to get. And she gives me her opinion. She's like, oh yeah, you should definitely take this one. I take the other one every single time. She hates me because it's what I do. Because the moment she says it, I'm like, no, I actually don't agree with your advice. So I made my own decision already while you were speaking. And I mean, it might be a bit annoying of me. I mean, my mom certainly thinks so, but it works. And I feel like that sort of works with every advice, or it should, because I genuinely believe that you were the person who not advised me, but maybe got me into the idea of moving abroad. I mean, I always want to do it, but I think that you supported it a lot, like years ago. And in that moment, obviously I had doubts about it because it was my idea, and I think I asked you about it. If you said, like, oh, I don't think you should move abroad, I don't think it's good, I wouldn't listen. Because deep down, I already made the decision and I already knew it was something I wanted. I was just looking for that reassurance. But if I didn't get the reassurance, I would still do it. And that might be just my personality, and maybe other people can be more easily influenced. But I feel like with every advice you get, because you will get terrible advice during your life. And so I think that you already know if you want to take it or not. You just have to sort of accept that and sort of be aware of that, and just not take every single advice you get just because you think someone else is smarter or older or more experienced. I mean, if I took my father's advice about my life, I would be very miserable right now. Very much miserable. So, again, I think that when my father gave me sort of suggestions or advice about my future and how my life should look, he didn't mean a bad thing. He just gave me advice that would work for him. But we are so different. We are such different people that things that are working for him could never work for me. And if he was more socially aware or emotionally intelligent or whatever you want to call it, he would never give me that advice because he would know that it's useless.
That's a good point, because, and I'm not meaning this specifically about your father, but just to generalize broaden this out, I think that there are some people who perhaps are well suited to giving advice, and there are some people that are not, because some people will give advice based purely on their own life experience and seeking to replicate that life experience, which could be completely unsuitable for another person, which kind of fits your scenario.
Yeah. But I don't want to make it sound like a bad thing. I genuinely believe that if you are not a bad person, and if you are not trying to ruin someone else's life on purpose, you are giving every single advice with best intentions.
Yeah.
You just don't realize how it works and how harmful it can be.
On the other hand, there may be people who have a breadth of experience and can see things in an objective way. So they're not being subjective. They're not putting their own personality and saying, well, this is what you should do because this is what I should do, which I think is what a lot of people do. I mean, that's fine if you preface it with saying, well, this is what I would do in this situation, but it's still leaving the recipient of the advice to ultimately make their own decision. I actually have an example of a time when I gave somebody some quite, I think, important advice. Kind of, it was a key moment perhaps in their life, and it was big for them. If I can explain it, it's quite difficult because this involves real people and I can't use the real names, but it involves a very, very famous, world famous band. And
He's not making it up. I'm just backing you up because you make it sound fake. So yeah, he's not making it up. I know the real people, heard about the real people, so credits.
So I knew most members of the band and their partners, their wives. Actually, they were all married. And very briefly, the wife of the guitarist, after the band had more or less split up, the wife of the guitarist, she either wrote a book, I think she wrote a book, or certainly there was a whole piece about her in English tabloid newspapers. And in this, of course, the tabloid newspapers sensationalized the story very much. And the drummer's wife came out of this very badly. Now, I was very close to the drummer's wife, still sort of am, although we're in different countries now. And she was calling me up and saying, this is terrible, what's happened? She was upset about it. And then she wanted to go to the newspapers herself and sell her own story, the inside story of the band. And as I say, this band was very famous, and the leader of the band is like one of the most famous people in the world. So the story had legs. Newspapers would have bought it around the world. And when this band toured, they used to tour with their whole entourage, with their wives and families as well. So the drummer's wife knew, all the inside gossip, or as Michelle would call it, the tea.
The tea.
So, there was no doubt that if she'd gone to any tabloid newspaper, they'd have said yes, and we'll give you some money for it. And in the short term, she was thinking, A, I could get back at the lead guitarist's wife, and B, I could make a quick profit. My advice to her was don't do it, because the longer lasting damage to her life would be something that she could never shake off, for the sake of a few £1,000s and maybe upsetting somebody else. It just wasn't going to be worth it to be dragged through the mud, because once you're in that arena, if you like, of being judged by the public, it's never going to end well. So my advice was don't do it, really, really don't do it. And she didn't. So, and now she can live anonymously without people pointing at her in the street. So, and she did take my advice. I was her, here we go again. I was her sole sounding board in this particular situation.
But also what I told you when you were telling me the story is that there are people who think that negative attention is also attention. And I'm sure that if she went to someone else, she could get the advice of like, oh yeah, do it. You should 100% do it. Maybe not because the person would want her to be dragged through media and everything, but maybe because the person would have a different sense of fairness, and the person could be like, oh, what she did to you is terrible. You have to do something back to her. And if that person was in that situation, they would also do it. And this whole situation could turn out completely differently if she just asked someone else for an advice.
Yeah. But, I was working in the media at that time, obviously, but that's because that's what I did most of my life. And I just I knew that if you are in that position where you're kind of behind some sort of expose, it blows back on you. It really does. And it happens every time. Nobody comes out of those kind of tell-all situations, kiss and tell situations, if you like, although this wasn't so much a kiss and tell story. Nobody comes out of it well. So that was my advice, partly based on, that's what I would have done, is nothing. I would have just kept my head down and, bitten my tongue and just not allowed myself to react. Because the minute you do, you're putting yourself in the firing line.
Yeah. But that only shows that you were very clearly the right person to ask advice from in this specific scenario. And that's another thing, I was saying how it's important when you are giving advice to know the person you are talking to. But it works the other way around as well. When you need an advice, which is something we all need at a certain point in our lives, you have to make the very important decision of knowing who to ask. Even if you don't know what to do, you just sort of have to think about, okay, what person will be the best for me in this situation and what person will fix this for me, basically. So, and you are also saying there is such space for miscommunication in these things because one person gives advice based on so many reasons and the other person just takes certain part of it subconsciously but never takes it all, also based on their reasons, personalities, and experience. So basically, it's one big miscommunication, and you just have to hope that you will come out of it in the best way possible.
I think, first of all, as a little side point, it's always hugely risky giving advice. I would never give advice that's not asked for. If somebody asks for it, advice, Nick, I've got to go to Ireland in 4 weeks' time. What should I do? Then I'm going to answer that question, even if reluctantly, or I want to sell my story to the Sun newspaper. What should I do? Again, I answer the question, but it's kind of being put on the spot. But if you're not being asked for advice, it's hugely risky to jump in and give it anyway. But the other point about that is, communication, because you could be giving all the best, most well thought out advice in the world. But if somebody doesn't actually want to listen to it, if they've asked you for advice, but in their own mind, they've made up their mind what they want to do. And they're just asking advice as a kind of, because they want some sort of affirmation. And they're not going to hear, chances are they're not going to hear your words. You're going to say, no, don't buy that racehorse. It's going to be a waste of money. It's a donkey. It's an old nag. It'll never win a race in its whole life. The only words a person is going to hear is win a race. Yes, I'm going to give all my savings, because that's what happens. People do that. And then there is that danger of they're going to come back and blame you. So
you don't 100%.
And, giving advice is a minefield. And, for instance, this person that I'm talking about, the drummer's wife, I felt I could give her advice because we were good friends. Plus, I knew all the other people involved in the story. So I could take a sort of balanced view. With you going to Ireland, I felt that it wasn't really a question of me saying yes or no, because it's not for me to do that. But it was for me to be your sounding board, and we could discuss the issues.
Yeah. And that's something I kind of want to tell you like what I do, and I want to think what you think about it. Because as you were talking, this thought came to my mind, and I remembered that I often listened to certain motivation speakers or people like that, giving advice online, which is a completely different thing, but for the sake of this story, it works. And sometimes you just listen to someone and it makes you feel so motivated and you just want to agree with them and you want to do what they are saying you should do. But you kind of forget to count with everything else that's happening in your life and with you personally. Because I feel like sometimes we have this illusion that we all start from the same place, which is not true. And for example, one of the advice that is very popular, and I actually think that you kind of agree with it, is that you should, if you like don't like your job, you should take a job that where you will be doing something you love, even when it's like for less money, for example. And we did talk about this in our decisions episode, I think. And I agreed with it as well. But I agreed with it to a point when it can't ruin your life. Like, yes, it's great if you can change your job, maybe even for less money, to do what you love. But if that would mean that you can't afford to live somewhere and you would become homeless or you would struggle with money terribly, then obviously don't do it. And so this is exactly one of these examples when you really have to, you just can't give universal advice and you just have to tailor them to every person, which obviously giving advice online is much harder, but it's also hard doing it in person. And so, for example, what I kind of do, and I mean, I was always told since I was a kid that I could be a lawyer, but I am sort of arguing with myself. When I have a friend asking me for advice, I will give them the first thing that comes to my mind. Okay, dump him. Just the first thing. I'm like, okay, you asked for advice. I think you should do this, 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 this. But then once I say it, I sort of play the devil's advocate to whatever I already said. And I'm like, okay, so this is one side. But also, you have to think about money. You have to think about this, 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 this. And I'm always trying to give both sides. And I'm always trying to give the best outcome and the worst outcome. So the person hears it and they hear both sides and they basically hear every single advice there is. So then they can make their own decision. Because I feel like just giving them one side could make them very overly motivated. And that's maybe not a good thing. If I give the example with moving abroad, if a friend of mine who I know is not wired to live abroad would come to me and they would say, I really want to move abroad. I really want to do it. Like, support me. I would support them. First thing, I would be like, oh, that's great. I mean, it worked out great for me, blah, 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 blah. But then I would be like, hey, you have social anxiety. You don't like traveling. You can't really be away from your family. Are you sure that, this all comes with it? Are you still sure you want to do it? And I would give them both sides. And then whatever they decide, at the end of the day, that's not up to me.
I'm just worried about why somebody who doesn't like traveling and doesn't like to be away from their family is thinking about moving abroad in the first place.
Well, they do. No, you're joking about it. They do, because one thing is, in Czech Republic, the living situation is terrible. The salaries are terrible and there are much better work opportunities abroad. And that's what attracts a lot of people. But that's exactly what they are not thinking about. Like, oh yeah, I would go, I don't know, to Denmark. I will have so much money. I will have this and that. I mean, I'm kind of doing it to myself as well, because while thinking where I will go study abroad, I was thinking between Ireland, Netherlands, and Denmark. And Denmark was really attractive to me. I was really thinking about it. But then again, I was sort of playing the devil's advocate with myself. And I was like, girl, you hate being cold. You can't function. You can't physically function in winter. Do you seriously want to move somewhere even more cold than in Czech Republic. I don't think you would survive it. And I was like, yeah, that actually makes sense. I mean, I'm not saying Ireland's any better, but you get my point.
Yeah, and I think there's a thing here that when we as individuals focus on something that we really want to do, even if it's entirely impractical. Again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about you don't hear the advice of people because you only kind of hear what you want to hear, because we are very good at sometimes deluding ourselves. And that can be a huge problem. Part of this comes back to something we mentioned earlier about your communication abilities. If you're the one giving advice, if you're the one taking advice or listening to advice, your ability to interpret somebody else's communication abilities come into play. And you can learn about how effective you are as a communicator, because guess what?
Guess what?
There's
It's
a
Nick's time to shine.
Life Happens quiz. Well, it's not actually Life Happens, it's just that on Life Happens, we like our quizzes. And we've got a particularly good one, and it's actually a very insightful one that is about your communication style. What is your communication style? And the answers are well reasoned and thought out and revealing. So let's have a quick look at it. As ever with our quizzes, I will put a link to the quiz and on the online quiz so you can do it at home. It'll be in the description of this episode, wherever you're consuming it, Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. And while you're there doing that, just before you click on the link, just click on the link to give us a like and subscribe so you can hear about more Life Happens episodes and quizzes. So this quiz, communication style quiz, Michelle and I have both done it. We'll reveal what our communication styles are at the end, but I'll just give you a taste of some of the questions, not all of them. There's 12 questions. I'll give you a taste by asking Michelle what her answers are.
Me being elaborate, so typical. Let's go.
So this one I particularly liked. Your roommate keeps leaving their dirty dishes around. What do you say to them? A. Hey, can you wash your dishes when you use them? I like to keep the place a little cleaner. B. I don't say anything. It's not my business. C. Don't use the dishes if you can't clean them up afterward. Or D. Gee, it's weird how the dishes never find their way back into the cabinets.
I'm sorry, but the last one is so you. That's so you. The passive aggressive response. I just, I wonder how that happened. I wonder why the script didn't write itself this week. So you, Nick. So
actually,
you.
I didn't actually answer that one, but now you mention it.
No, because you are not that self-aware.
But what was your answer?
I think mine was the first one, the most simple, direct one. Just like, hey, would you mind?
Yeah.
I would like it to keep it clean. On the other hand, also, if it didn't really affect me, I probably wouldn't say anything. If it was the case that it wouldn't really make the kitchen dirty, maybe because the person is keeping the dishes in his room and we have like separate plates and everything and it doesn't affect my life, I just wouldn't say anything.
Okay. I answered the first one as well. But it's interesting that when you were giving the example, it was a he. You naturally assume that somebody being messy and not doing the dishes was male. Another question from this quiz. In a group project, your partner takes all the credit for your work. How do you respond? A. I correct after you've dumped him. And again, you've assumed you're in a group project with a male. We'll let that pass for once. A. I correct the record and let the teacher know exactly how much work I did. B. I accept it. As long as I get a good grade, I don't care. C. I tell the whole class that my partner is lying. D. I find a way to get back at them after class.
Why are you immediately okay? I'm just dumping people. You are just getting into violence. It's like, okay, and you judge me for dumping him? please. What was your answer anyway? Actually, I'm not sure I know that one.
My answer was I correct the record and let the teacher know exactly how much work I did. Even if I do it subtly, I would do that.
Yeah, mine was the same. If it was my very close friend, I can imagine if it was Caroline, I would just let it pass. And I would be like, girl, the fuck you doing? But like, in case, but as long as I still get a good mark, I'd just be like, okay, you just owe me a beer now. But if it wasn't my friend, no, I take credit for what I'm doing. I'm not staying up until 3 a.m. doing assignments for nothing.
One, and you'll love this one. Would you say you handle criticism well?
Oh, come on. Now this is getting personal. It's just not, I don't like being elaborate, okay, anymore. I'm resigning.
I'll give you my answer as well. The choices are A, yes, I always appreciate feedback. B, it sometimes hurts my feelings, but I know it's necessary. C, I don't think anyone has a right to criticize others. Or D, only if I respect the person criticizing me.
Yeah, what was your answer?
My answer was A, yes, I always appreciate feedback.
Really? Since when?
No, really. I do, even if sometimes it is painful. And sometimes it can be. And I'll go away and beat myself up and then I'll come back all stronger for it. But I'd rather get the feedback than not. And your answer was?
What do you think it was? Because you really targeted that question very personally on me. So I'm really curious, what do you think my answer is? Did I cry about it? Yes, a bit.
I'm torn between B and D, but I'm going to go with D. Only if I respect the person criticizing me.
Yes. I don't really take criticism from people that I don't respect or from people that I know had nothing to do with what they are criticizing.
Yeah.
Or from people who I just know are doing it or giving me the feedback from like wrong reasons. Because there are people who will give you feedback and criticize you just because they want to hurt you.
Yeah.
And obviously I wouldn't take that. I only ask for feedback from people I respect. And I think it's the same thing with advice. And feedback or advice that you are not asking for is not something you should be given.
Yeah. Okay. I totally agree with that. I could almost have answered the same thing myself because you make some very good points there. So we could just briefly touch on our results. We actually both of us, Michelle and me, got the same result.
Which I'm kind of surprised by. I don't know what the other options for results were.
No, I don't.
But I think that this result is better for me, fits me better than it fits you to a certain point. Because I don't think you are... all I'm saying is that I don't think you are English, man. I don't think that you are such an open communicator as I am. Because I will tell you whatever I think in any given moment. You are more subtle with like expressing what you actually think.
Possibly. We better just let people know what the answer was. We're both assessed as assertive communicators. And then it gives you a detailed breakdown of what that means. Assertive communicators are the most clear and effective communicators. You're a confident person who knows what you're about, and you aren't afraid to say so. You speak up and express your thoughts, feelings, needs, and opinions directly and in a straightforward and easy to understand way, and so on. It goes on. I mean, if I'm communicating in a professional sense, that was my job for many years, to communicate on through the media. I've also addressed many conferences and such like. So that's this week's quiz. If you want to do it, as I said, go to the description of this episode and you'll find the link to the quiz there. And then you can find out what your communication style is. And that will help you if somebody comes and asks you for advice. So we've gone through lots of scenarios, advice scenarios. What would you say is our how would you describe it, core takeaway from this week's episode?
I think that the main point I wanted to make today was that advice doesn't work unless it matches both the person's personality and what they are avoiding. Because that ties to what you are saying, that we tend to only take advice that fit our narrative, which is not really good. And I think that advice should really challenge something within us to be really effective.
Good words, wise words. And I think that's how we're going to end this particular episode of Life Happens, but you can too.